I had the distinct pleasure to sit down with Gary Chupik, founder of Elite Mindset and a performance coach who helps top athletes across the NFL, the NHL, MLB, and the Olympics, among many more. This episode is packed, guys. We talk real talk on leadership, on mindset, and the lies that keep men stuck. And here's what you're going to take away from this conversation: how to rebuild your mindset by tracing it all the way back to the belief that started it all. Why most men leak at the level of their self-belief and how to stop that. And a powerful framework called Self for Others that redefines how you lead at home and at work. Gary brings clarity, conviction, and truth to this conversation. If it hits home for you guys, I need you to do this for me. Tap that 5-star button, leave a review, and share it at least with one other guy who desperately needs the message. Let's keep building men who lead with purpose.
I had a couple people that just saw what I didn't see in me. And to me, the most important 4 letters of the alphabet are I, C, N, U. And when someone said to me, Gary, here's what I see in you, I see someone who just has yet to come alive. And I think you're a smart dude. And I think you can do whatever it is that you want to do. And that just totally blew my mind that somebody said, here's what I see in you. And if you think about it, it's pretty prophetic in a lot of ways. It's like you're speaking into existence something that you see in somebody else. And I think one of the greatest gifts we can give younger men than us is to tell them what we see in them.
Leaders are not born in a womb. They are forged through heat, pressure, and a whole lot of sweat. The Fire Forged Leader podcast serves the audience through exploring leadership at work, in the community, and with the family, using a practical perspective and real-life experiences from the host, Steve Baumgartner, and his guests in the Forge. Now, it's time to enter the Forge with the Fire Forged Leader.
Gary Chupik, welcome to the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Steve.
We talked quite a bit pre-game, but I am very excited to continue this conversation. You know, we align a lot on a lot of different things, but you have a company called Elite Mindset. How would you describe mindset to the average person?
Well, the key concept or key phrase you just used was the average person, because I think there's a light version, LITE, of the word or definition of the word, and I think there's a more in-depth one. But I think the light definition is a conditioned set of beliefs that drive behavior. So I think people can make that connection. My mindset sort of comes from my beliefs that drive behavior. I think most people can accept that, but that's not good enough for me. I got to figure this thing out. I got to put more time and effort into it. So I created my own equation. Do you want to test it out?
Absolutely.
Let's see. All right. To me, a lot of our mindset comes from experiences that we've had in the past. We have an experience that we've gone through, and we may have initiated, or it might have happened to us, especially when we're younger. So we have an experience that we have, in brackets, thoughts and feelings about. So now I've had thoughts and feelings about an experience that I've had in the past. And some of those you had control over, but especially, again, if you're younger, you kind of don't have control over those thoughts and feelings. They just are. But then outside of those brackets, you have my response. And so you have a response to the thoughts and the feelings and the experience that you have. And if you take your response, your thoughts and your feelings from that experience, now you've created a belief, and it's primarily a belief about yourself. And you mash it all together in this sequence, you actually get a mindset. So that's where your mindset comes from. It comes from experiences that you have thoughts and feelings about, that you have a chosen response to, especially as an adult, that created a belief, and then finally a mindset. A really healthy mindset is one that results in new and improved behaviors. And if you think about it, a new and improved behavior is like going all the way back to a new experience. And that you have a new and improved thoughts and feelings about, with a new and improved response, new and improved belief system about yourself, and a new and improved mindset. And so this is how actually you build a mindset. is by saying, where in my belief system, or what happened, first of all, where something happened in my past that I had thoughts and feelings about, that I responded a certain way, that I created a belief about myself. And so sometimes it's really healthy, not every time, but sometimes it's healthy to go back and find out, you know what happened? So sometimes when I talk to somebody, I'll just say, hey, man, what happened? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, what happened? Like, you came up with this belief about yourself. It just didn't come out of nowhere. It came from somewhere. And so maybe you've never thought about it that way before, but it came from somewhere. So let's dig a little bit deeper and trying to find what that is.
It's interesting. I'm sitting here thinking just simple things, right? Fear of clowns, for example. A
Mhm.
lot of people have fear of clown syndrome.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you sit there and you think about where might have they gotten that? And you start thinking horror movies are always full of scary clowns.
Mhm.
I mean, clowns in their nature aren't scary when they're making balloons and what have you. But it's that connection to that movie and the feelings that they had that gives them that belief structure.
There
Can
was
relate to
something
that,
unsettling about it, right? That they,
right?
and there was, your response might have been, well, let's be curious and keep watching, or I don't want to watch that anymore. So the responses was either to ignore it or to like entertain the idea for a bit because you were curious about that in some weird way. And so here you are, your response was to keep watching it. And what was the belief that you formed that all clowns are scary? And that's the belief. And then your mindset is, I don't want to be anywhere near clowns at all. And so that's a good example. Another good example was when I was in high school, I was not smart enough to be in geotrig. Yet somehow I found myself in that class. I had a teacher who loved to make fun of me because he didn't like athletes. I played football in high school. Every opportunity he had to embarrass me, he did. He would ask me the answer to a question he knew I didn't have. So he would ask me the answer and I would make something up. Yeah, the answer is 7.141387641. The entire class would laugh. And the funny thing is, I'm not a joker, but my response to being embarrassed in that situation was, I'm just going to be a class clown. But I wasn't a class clown, but it was my response because I was trying to find a way to operate in this space. And Mr. Watson was not, well, how do you think I felt going to that class every week? I didn't look forward to it. I felt like I was going to be embarrassed. And if I put all of that together, my response was to be funny. My belief that I created about myself was that, guess what? I wasn't very smart. So my belief system growing up was that I was not a smart kid. So my mindset is to carry on with this equation was, I'm never going to go to college. I'm never going to amount to anything. I'm never going to use my brain. I'll just go dig ditches. And this is the impact it had on my life. This idea of this equation was for me to go back to that experience. And if I could be like Mr. Invisible, the invisible man, and whisper something in my ear, something, the invisible man, I'm in that class and I whisper something, what would I have whispered as an adult, like 56-year-old Gary? What would he have whispered in 16-year-old Gary's ear? And if I could whisper anything, I would whisper, hey man, like your thing is not geotrig. However, there are 9 different kinds of intelligence, but geotrig's not yours. Don't worry about it. You'll find it. And that would have changed my mindset dramatically. But back then, you're so young, you just kind of don't know. The day before classes started in college, the day before I enrolled, and it took about 8 people to say, you should take some psych classes or whatever. I ended up going to college and graduating with high honors for my master's degree. Looking back over it, they didn't teach like philosophy in high school. They didn't teach psychology in high school. They didn't teach theology in high school. And now just looking back at it, I was like, oh, there just weren't any subjects that I was good at. There's musical intelligence, linguistic intelligence, spatial intelligence, emotional intelligence, kinetic intelligence. People can dance. They're amazing. I just couldn't find anything in high school that I was really good at besides sports. And that wasn't really a class. It was just extracurricular. And so but you can see how that really affected me in a significant way. I just didn't think I was going to amount to much. That was my mindset.
Absolutely. And I'm sitting here thinking about, going back and whispering in your own ear, but of course that didn't happen, right?
Mhm.
You didn't have this time travel experience. So How did you get past that and actually go to university? Was that in Canada as well or in Seattle?
I have my
Okay.
master's degree here in America, but went to college in Canada. I had a couple people that saw what I didn't see in me. To me, the most important four letters of the alphabet are I, C, N, U. And when someone said to me, Gary, here's what I see in you, I see someone who just has yet to come alive. I think you're a smart dude and you can do whatever it is that you want to do. Totally blew my mind that somebody said, here's what I see in you. And if you think about it, it's pretty prophetic in a lot of ways. It's like you're speaking into existence something that you see in somebody else. And I think one of the greatest gifts we can give younger men is to tell them what we see in them. I remember being 17 or 18 and somebody saying, here's what I see in you. Now I try and practice that as much as I possibly can because I know that people don't forget stuff like that.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a couple key points in there to be able to see that I see something in someone else. A lot of people are afraid of, even bringing something like that up, giving someone those kind of accolades. But then there's also the receiver on the other side. More times than not, you don't know what you're talking about. They shuffle it towards the side, but there's a pivotal point in that conversation.
It's huge. Yeah. Like I didn't understand it at the moment, but I remembered it. That's the crazy thing. Like I remember that. And then to go on and graduate with high honors in college, you could have held a gun to my head. I was be like, no way, that'll never happen. But it did. And I look back at those few men, primarily men, who spoke into my life at an early age and said, you know what? I think you're a little misunderstood, but here's what I see in you. I'm like, I never think of myself that way because my mindset was kind of messed up from those experiences, those feelings, that self-belief. But man, having someone speak into your life like that and add that kind of belief, like to encourage someone means to give them your courage. And so it really raised my level of self-belief. The way I look at belief and self-belief, and by the way, I think it's crucial. It's not sort of like, hey, you got to believe in yourself. It's actually far more serious than that. For example, if I look at this cup, it contains my level of self-belief. The top is 10, the bottom is 0. What is your level of self-belief? And let's say, according to this cup, it's about half full. I would say that my self-belief in any given area, but maybe in general in myself is, let's say I'm a 5. Well, guess what? I will always leak at the level of my self-belief. And this is why, and you know this as a leader, you'll pour world-class training, coaching, mentoring, everything into a person, but they always leak at the level of their self-belief. So you're trying to pour in more liquid, more training, more teaching, more mentoring, more good stuff, and they're leaking at a 5. And you're like, why isn't this guy getting it? Well, it's because they don't believe in themselves.
That's an interesting topic too, and you relate that back to parenting. I talk about my boys on the show all the time. My boys are wired hot, the world calls it ADHD, this, that, and the other. I just call them wired hot.
Yeah.
My 6-year-old Dom, he's definitely got the gene, right? But at 6 years old, he's got, washboard abs. He rides BMX. He does ninja classes. We homeschool, thank God, because in a traditional school, he would not survive. As a parent, I have older kids and I had, a couple sons that were also wired hot, and I wasn't as good of a parent back then. I remember being negative about those behaviors. Now there's behaviors that we can accept and we can't accept as a household and as a father. But a lot of times we're like, go outside, play ball, ride your bike, burn off some energy during the middle of the day when he's supposed to be doing school. But we always come back to not focus on the negatives, but you are really, really good at this.
Yeah.
Trying to focus on those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I like your 9 different intelligences because that puts some words to it. But I think it's very important to speak that truth into people, not positivity, but truth,
Exactly. And how many people out there that didn't have the same opportunity that I had? Maybe they just believed the lie. And then all of a sudden it's like they're, decades go by or years go by believing a lie about themselves. One of the guys, I do a Monday morning mindset. Every Monday morning, I send out a text message to thousands of people. There's a guy in New York. He is a surgeon in New York in the ER. You talk about rough job. Every week he, responds to my text message and, he's like, more nightmares. His self-deprecation, his self-hatred for all the mistakes that he's made. It's just so overwhelming to me. And so I texted him last week. I was like, whatever you got to do to get to Seattle or fly me to New York, you just need to do it because it'll be life-changing for you. Because the guy's trapped in his own lies. He's literally trapped in his own lies. And he says, I get everything I deserve. I deserve the nightmares. I deserve the depression. I'm just like, what are you talking about?
People.
It's just so but he's just one of those guys that, he's believed the lies. And if you and me being men of faith, this is how the enemy works. It always lies.
Absolutely.
Every single sin that is ever committed, there is a lie believed. End of story. It's true. Think of every sin, every single one, there's a lie believed. That's how the enemy works. It's like his native tongue, the Bible says. This is what this guy does, is he lies. And if we are sort of armored with the truth, the helmet of salvation and the belt of truth. I read my Bible every morning at 3:40. I am radically committed. And it's not because I think I'm disciplined or great or I'm anything. I just know that left to my own devices, I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. And so my loyalty to the scriptures is the only thing that makes me different than anybody else. I'm reading through Revelation, and my wife was reading a biography about a guy who wrote, a sort of an interpretation of Revelation. And we just have such totally different views of the book. But I'm just like, hey, what are some of the things that are uttered in heaven? Literally uttered by angels. And I'm like, I want to say those things. I want to bring heaven down to earth in a way in my own life. And so in Revelation chapter 4, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come. When we say that kind of stuff, do you have any idea that there are legions of angels in heaven singing this, 24/7, there's no time, but 24/7, they are constantly this thing is in there. And so when you and I say those things, it's like our spirits come alive. We're saying heavenly things.
I love it. I actually love that sung. That's my favorite. Oh, it's so beautiful. I was going to go somewhere, but you captivated me with all that, Gary.
Well, in some ways, it's kind of interesting because we were talking earlier about mental performance and leadership, and we were talking about body, mind, soul, and spirit, and engaging the spirit part and becoming better men. I don't know if you can be complete without engaging that part of us. And when God breathes life into us, things change pretty dramatically. Paying attention to our spirits is really important, and having God breathe life into us. A lot of things make sense when God's spirit breathes life into us. All of a sudden, the world it's called in philosophical terms, sense making. There's actually a body of knowledge called sense making. It's how do we make sense of the world? Jordan Peterson's a good example of a sense maker. He's making sense of the world. And when our hearts and our spirits are aligned with the Spirit of God, man, a lot of things begin to make sense.
Oh, agreed. If someone could just interpret Jordan Peterson for me, because I'm not good with things over 3 syllables.
I know. He's a pretty complicated guy, but he's a Canadian, and I've been following him for almost a decade. Even before he hit the big time, it's been fun to watch his evolution as a person and develop that spiritual side of him, which has been outstanding. I'm a fan. I know a lot of other people have their reservations about him, but I'm a fan because I've watched his evolution. We're not in the final chapter of Gary Chupik's life. We're not in the final chapter of Steve's life. And you know what? It's not the final chapter of Jordan Peterson's life either.
He was absolutely phenomenal. I got to go see him live down in Kansas City one time, and it was phenomenal. Of course, I was looking up in the dictionary on my phone. What did you just say, honey?
Yeah.
But, you know what? Education degree.
I think he's a very complicated person and very thought-filled. One of the things that I really respect about him is the weight he puts on calling himself a Christian. That is you're going to call yourself a Christian? buckle up, bro.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to claim to be something, that's just not going to be lip service. If you're going to claim to be something and embrace all that there is in that acknowledgement, then you better buckle up, bro, because you're in for a wild ride. And I would love to say that it's a beautiful ride. And it doesn't mean that it's easy or that God owes you anything or you're going to get rich or anything like that. No, he said, know me and my sufferings, part of me when you suffer for me. When you work
Agreed.
hard, when you sacrifice something, you become like me in that way. And that's what the Apostle Paul was all about. He wanted to become more like Christ. Even John said, I must decrease and he must increase in my life. So I just have a lot of respect for Jordan and really am cheering him on.
Yeah, it's been a interesting ride to watch for sure. I did remember where I was going to go, and that's getting back to mindset, but opening your Bible at 345, you understand that that's what sets your mind right off the bat. And just kind of a little segue in there, a lot of people, the moment that they wake up, what do?
Phone.
They pick up that phone, let the world tell them what their mindset's going to be, not where their direction should be headed.
Exactly. And from a psychological standpoint, so that's true spiritually. From a psychological standpoint, what you're really doing is you're reinforcing reaction instead of reinforcing, initiating something in your life. If you're constantly reacting to things, you're not actually taking the initiative. What about your life? What about who you are? What about the things that you want? What about the ambitions that you have? What about the things that you feel like God is inviting you into in your life? Those things require action. They require steps. And so when we reinforce on a daily basis reaction, we kind of don't do anything. Somehow we just get the dopamine hit and we scroll and we kind of find out what's going on in the world. We don't train ourselves like our volition, our decisions to do something is like a muscle, and you have to decide to use it or you lose it. A lot of people teach and reinforce themselves how to react rather than initiate something.
And I think a lot of that is why culture is the way that it is. I
Very much so.
fully believe that men are designed for leadership of the family. But if the first thing that they look at is this guy right here, right? And I'm not throwing any stones because there's many days, but if that's the first thing, you're not leading, you're following at that point.
Yep.
You're following society, you're following that reaction. You're not acting upon the world, you're reacting to the world. But just the whole 9 yards. It doesn't do anything for your mindset for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't take any effort.
So in your career, Gary, you're dealing with professional athletes, things like that. Is there any names that you can mention?
I cannot. Typically, when I work with athletes, you sign a non-disclosure and, so yeah. But lots of professional athletes.
What kind of sports?
So NFL is my biggest one. NHL, Major League Baseball. I actually have more and more motocross, CrossFit Olympics, US figure skating. There's a lot of sports. Cross country would be another one. A little bit of UFC. My favorite one is NFL because I played high school football, a little bit of college ball. So I can relate to those guys quite a bit.
Gotcha. So we talked about the average Joe mindset. What's different about these pro athletes, and their mindset and what they need to have?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because a lot of people think that elite athletes have these amazing mindsets. Maybe some do, but there's a lot of dudes who don't have the talent, skill, or genetics to be at that top tier, but their mindsets may even be stronger than the guys who are elite. And here's a good example of that. In 2019, 2020 NHL. So think of all the players that play in the NHL. There's 8 rounds in the NHL, 8-round draft, like eight draft rounds. And so they did a cross section of all the players that were playing in the NHL. And it was like, I'm not gonna have it perfect, but it's basically like 34, 36% of every player in the NHL was drafted in the first round. Yeah, that makes quite a bit of sense. So you have 1 in 3 chance of making the NHL being drafted in the first round. The second largest group was the second round at 19%. The third largest group of players playing in the NHL were undrafted. So what does that tell you about the mindset of a guy or gal who doesn't get drafted and they don't give up and they work at it. And all of a sudden, some of them become stars. Some of them become great players. Some of them become average players. It's just to play in the NHL, you have to be phenomenal. The idea that you can be undrafted and that's the third largest group in the NHL. If you have a guy that's ultra talented, skilled, genetic, who knows what they do with their talent? Who knows what they do with their skill level? And you can train skill. It's hard to train talent to some degree. It's really hard to train genetics. But if you take a guy who didn't make it, but yet doesn't have the skill, the genetics, so on and so forth, but they still make it in the NHL, I think it's arguable to say that those guys have just as amazing of a mindset, because that's actually the reason why they're there. It's not because of their skill set or genetics. It's because they have an amazing mindset. So that piece, that mindset piece, it's pretty crucial.
I was listening to Bedros Keuilian yesterday, and he was talking about Kobe Bryant and a couple other pro ball players. It's the work ethic. And that, of course, comes from mindset. Kobe would, get there before anybody else in the gym, have them unlock the gym for him. He'd practice 3 times a day because he had that mindset of, I want to be the best at this that I can be.
Yeah. So there's something called the illusion of choice. If you want to be elite, you don't have a lot of choices. If you want to be good at something, you have more choices. If you want to be average, you have lots of choices throughout your day. But if you want to be elite, you start removing choices in your life. Guys like Kobe, I have a lot of mixed feelings about Kobe. I have a lot of mixed feelings about Jordan. I have mixed feelings about these elite athletes. And here's why. If you look at their lives, they are the elite of the elite. These guys are amazing. You can talk work ethic, the amalgamation of skill, talent, ability, coachability. There's so many things. But if you look at the different domains of their life, they're like literal dumpster fires. Multiple marriages, more kids than they can count. They're a literal dumpster fire in the different domains of their life. And so one of the things I'm really passionate about is being done with the days where guys are good at one thing. They sell out for the one thing. And I'm a guy who has talked to some of their wives and some of their families, and the trail of hurt and pain that some of those elite athletes leave in their wake. Man, listen, here's the truth. Steve, if you wanted to be a decamillionaire, right? You wanted to have $10 million. You know what? If that's all that you cared about, Steve, you'd go do it. You could be a millionaire just like that. No problem. You want to earn 10 million? I bet you could do 10 million. In fact, I don't doubt for a second. But you know what makes you good at what you do and what makes you a real man is that you care about the different domains of your life. That means you have to share your time, attention, and resources to be good at a bunch of different stuff, not just one. So I'm careful to hand out honor to guys who want to be good at one thing and are dumpster fires in the rest of that. To me, there's not a lot of honor in that, to be honest. I really honor the guy who's good at everything and cares about people, wants to be the best husband, or wife, or best father, best employee, is a model citizen in their case. Like, that's what I respect. Not everyone respects the same thing I respect, but that's the kind of guy that I want to follow. This other stuff about, you're an elite athlete and you're so good at this and so good, but all the other areas of your life are dumpster fires. I don't care too much about that. I think that's a cop-out and it's an easy way to fame, but I just think there's so much better that we can aim and shoot for.
Oh, I agree. 100%. I agree with that, Gary. And it's interesting because they get this mindset and they're really good in this one domain, as you call it. But you talk about the aftermath and what are they doing for the mindsets of everybody else around them?
Yeah.
They're putting challenges that don't even need to be there.
It's true. I had one guy, and this is a true story. I'm in Vegas. I'm speaking at a conference and there's one guy on stage, he's a pretty famous guy. And he's like, hey man, I'm going to run around America. I'm going to run around the perimeter of America. I'm like, well, good on you, bro. That's pretty impressive if you can do that. That's quite a feat. And his wife and his daughter are standing right beside him. So he's talking about doing this. And I can just kind of tell there's some tension in the air. So he goes off and he starts talking to somebody else. I start talking to his wife and his daughter. She's probably 13 or 14 years old, talking to them about their relationship with their father and her husband. It wasn't very flattering. And they really felt like he was choosing the fame over his love and care and concern and service to his family. There's a good example of someone who, if Steve wants to run around the perimeter of America, he can do that if he wants to. And you can get all the accolades that come with that. But at the expense of your relationship with your wife or your 13-year-old daughter, it's a big decision to make.
Absolutely. And the same's true, bringing it back into the real world, not elite athletes. But, I made the choice for a long time, chasing after my career. And I was out on the road from Monday through Friday. I binged watched my family on the weekends. There is no difference in that. So it doesn't just happen to elite athletes. We need to, or sub-elite athlete. I don't know what we want to call them now after you made that characteristic, Gary, but we as men especially get trapped into this one domain in our life, and that's work that we're supposed to provide. I was in Genesis the other day, and something caught my ear that's never caught it. When you're looking at the Garden of Eden, it's man was made for work, leisure, and love.
Hmm.
And I found that just,
Wow.
Leisure is to rest in him, of course.
Yeah, that's beautiful, bro. I have a friend in my life, and I don't know if he'll ever listen to this, but we were having a conversation. He has 3 houses, the boat, and the nice cars. He's got so much going for him. He's good looking. He's got everything. Trophy wife, good kids, and he's just seemingly got everything. And yet, he's a dumpster fire on the inside. And so I was working with one of his sons, and he was like, yeah, I don't really talk to my dad. And I'm like, oh, tell me more about that. And I talked about some of the disappointment of the lack of relationship with his father. His dad is an alcoholic, and he works a lot. And so I had breakfast with dad, and I was like, hey man, listen, I just want to tell you something that you need to hear. And that is that you're working hard. You're in your early 50s. You don't need to. You don't need the money. You don't need to do this. And so what's driving you? I kind of caught him off guard. He goes, yeah, I just want to leave as much as I can behind for my kids, And I said, can I tell you something about your kids? I said, hey man, listen, whether you leave them 2.1 million or 1.9 million, they're not going to give a damn. All they really want is a relationship with their dad. If you could press fast forward and go into the future, whether it's 1.8 million or 1.2 million that you leave them, are they going to care about that 700 or 800? But you care a lot. And I'm curious as to why you care about that.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because is he building his self-worth sort of based on how much money he leaves his kids and how well he sets them up? The Bible says you don't know what your kids are going to do with your money, right? You'll get one kid that blows it and the other kid maybe does something productive with it. But is that really helpful to them in the first place? Helping your kids out as much as they need in a moment, maybe that's okay. But giving your kids too much can also ruin them. This idea of men attaching their worth to how many toys they have and what they even the legacy that they leave behind monetarily. Yeah, I think that's a fallacy. What our kids really want is us. And it's hard for guys because without vulnerability, there's no healing, especially for men. Without vulnerability, there is no, but guys find vulnerability tough. And I find vulnerability tough. But I know that the more vulnerable I am and the more courageous I am about those things, the more other men open up about their lives.
Agreed, 100%. And you stop and think about all the men who are role models in our lives. And those are the qualities that we really respect,
Absolutely.
I have a really good friend who was doing really well in life, and then he got addicted, and then he was homeless. We all love the hero story, right? He comes back out with his wife, and now he helps shut down trap houses in Memphis and rebuild them into sober living facilities. I absolutely love those kind of stories. So why would we think that it should be any different with us? And going back to the lies of the devil, I guess this is where it comes from, right?
Yeah, it really does. I mean, the Bible says even in the last days, people will be prone to deception, even the elect, right? So even people who are godly will be prone to deception. And without the knowledge of the scriptures, you'll always be prone because the
Absolutely.
world has a way of thinking. You just got to jump in the river and it takes you. You don't have to think. It just takes you, it'll take you down its path. But the only thing that you have is your knowledge of the scriptures. And that's what teaches you how to live. So this idea of, maybe I don't need the scriptures if I just live good enough, be good enough,
Oh,
it
yeah.
actually doesn't get you to where you ultimately want to go. And so that's why I think committing ourselves to understanding God's word is just so materially important. And that's the thing that separates the deceived from the truth seekers. I'm not really attached to anything other than God's truth. I'm not attached to anything. I don't care what political party, I'm just attached to truth. And so I want to align myself with people that reflect my values. When truth is your North Star, you can smell deception a mile away, right? You don't have to really think too hard about stuff. The pursuit of truth, being true and living truthfully and seeking truth perpetually, it's really our North Star.
Yeah. It also opens you up to the voice of God. It becomes a lot clearer. And I've been on both sides of this fence for sure.
I have found that the primary impact of sin in my life is deafness. That I am deaf to hearing God's leading, prompting, whisper. I become deaf. I speak from personal experience, not because I'm smart. Like I just know that if I'm doing it Gary's way, then I become really deaf. And if I can't hear anything, I just do whatever I want to do because I don't hear anything. So I think to have that affinity and affection and loyalty to the scriptures and our obedience to them allows us to hear God's voice in our lives. And hearing God's voice, probably pretty important in living this life.
Absolutely. So just to close us out here, Gary, the guys who are listening to this show might be out there in the workplace, executives running things. They're wanting to improve their marriages, how they present themselves as a father. They just want to be better in all of these domains, like you said. What would be the handful of things that you'd suggest to these guys?
That's such a good question. There's so many things I could say right now, but I suppose if I was to centrifuge it down to some fundamental essentials, I would say number one is your walk with God. Think of the different domains of your life, including your spiritual life, as gardens. What happens to a garden when you don't tend it? What happens to your marriage when you don't tend it? Like you don't pick the weeds, you just let things grow. Imagine what happens to those gardens. They get overgrown with weeds and all sorts of stuff. And then when you come to that point where you're like, oh man, I have been neglecting this garden, this domain of my life. Now I got to put in some extra work. And so don't be afraid to put in the extra work into like getting the garden like in tip-top shape. Once you pick all the weeds, which is interesting, you can start fertilizing and pruning and watering, and then one day you reap a harvest. But paying attention to the different domains is like tending the gardens of your life. And when it comes to your spiritual life, it's really the first place to start because it informs all the other domains of your life. So why not do the one domain that fixes all the other domains? And that's the reason why spirituality is the base. It's like the fundamental core of who we are and sort of the sequence to take. And then once we figure that out, I believe in the SFO principle, the self for others. It sounds selfish, but it's not. When you take such good care of yourself and you tend those gardens and you work on you, everyone around you benefits. Your wife benefits, your kids benefit, your job benefits. Everybody benefits when you take care of you. You get distracted by all sorts of things in life and justify them by saying, well, I'm just trying to help people. No, dude, fix you. Work on you. So I have something called the leadership pyramid. And here it is. This has 5 levels. The bottom is self-leadership. It never ends. It's the foundation of all performance. It is self-leadership, end of story. It's not motivation. It's not your passion. It's your ability to lead yourself even when you're not motivated. So that self-leadership never ends. And so when you practice the SFO principle, you take care. Listen, man, if I get 2 hours sleep at night, I am not the most patient person the next day. I'm not the most emotionally regulated person. I am not the kindest person. There's a lot of things I'm not if I'm working on 2 hours sleep. So for me to go to bed at 9 p.m. is an act of love to my family. Somebody could look at that and say, well, Gary, you're just being selfish. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm going to sleep on time to love my family. I go to the gym early in the morning. Why? Because I want to love my family really well. I want to put myself in the best position to succeed. So when we talk about where does someone start, it really is you. It's you. And when you come to some level of respectability in your life, like you have a standard that you have in your head of how you want to live your life. And when you come close to that, then you can lead somebody else. But if you don't do self-leadership well, don't lead somebody else. Why? Well, because you're not being a good example to them. You're not being a great coach. You're not being a great mentor. You're not being a great example to them. So if you're doing meth, don't get involved in a relationship because you got to work on you, right? Self-leadership, couple leadership, just meeting another person. When you do that, then you can do group leadership. Group leadership is really important because if you skip over the couple leadership level, you'll never know how to mentor the next leader of the group. You'll never know how to mentor someone so they can start their own group. You'll never do that because you skipped that level, right? So you got to pay the price. You got to invest in that. And then when you do group leadership, you can graduate to area or department leadership. And I'm speaking to a guy here who has been in charge of an organization. If you do that, then you can do organizational leadership or business leadership, where you can be like, hey, listen, I've done every level of this. I know what you're going through, and here's the way to go. When you can speak out of that kind of leadership, you're a very powerful person. You've invested in your own self-leadership. And even if you're at the top of the organization, that self-leadership piece never ends. You don't stop investing in yourself. You don't stop having integrity. You don't stop having character. And you and I both know complete huge businesses that the entire business falters or crumbles based on the self-leadership of its primary leader.
Agreed.
So that CEO, that business owner, if they don't do self-leadership well, every level of the entire leadership pyramid crumbles, right? So I don't think you ever stop investing in yourself and taking care of your own self-leadership. Self-leadership is the holy grail of all performance.
Amen. And I like the way that you put it. It's self for others. There's 3 words in there on purpose. It carries the service component. So here's the interesting part, and you know this as well as I do, Gary. The interesting part that I have with men is I love what you're saying. I love what you're doing. I really want to take part, but I don't want to take the time away from my family, or I don't want to take the money away from my family. But from this side of the fence, I look at it and I just don't understand it anymore. You know, what you said as far as the self-leadership, and that's the bedrock of everything else. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me anymore.
Yeah, a lot of guys get stuck. And here's why people get stuck is because they want 2 things. And you can't have both. You've got to make a decision. I don't want to let money go or invest in myself. And I want to be a better leader. I have to invest in myself, but I don't want to let go of the money, but I want to invest in myself. Hey, listen, man, the great Thomas Sowell said it best. I can't find a better way to say it. And he said this, he said, everything in life is a trade-off. So what do you want more? You got to pick, what do you want more? When it comes to temptation, like for guys, when it comes to sex and pornography, you just to acknowledge that you want the red dress is really powerful. But to say, I want to be faithful to my wife more, your brain understands that. And so does your heart, right? So you have to decide what you want more. If you can come to a place in your life where you say, listen, I want more. It's really funny. Like I had this guy called me, it was last Friday. He's from Indianapolis. And he says, hey, Gary, I want to hire you, but can you talk me into it? He goes, hey, I listened to you speak at a conference. Yeah, I bought in. I just love it. I'm wondering if you can seal the deal. And I said, yeah, I ain't doing it. I am not doing it. I said, listen, man, you have to decide whether I'm the right guy at the right time with the right message. And if I am, let's go. But if you have to talk yourself into it, then it ain't the right time. And I don't want to work with you. And so I think I just kind of let him relax a little bit. Like after I was like, hey, I'm not going to talk you into it. I think, I had a situation, this is hard to talk about, but I was going to work with the president of the Houston Texans in the NFL. He's one of my clients. I can talk about it because he's passed away. But I was going to do a game plan for life with him. And about a week before him and I were scheduled to do a game plan, he took his own life. He committed suicide. I couldn't help but to think what would have happened had we spent those 2 days together. I wept because I know the life transformation that happens. And then I decided I'm never going to soft sell the game plan for life ever again. I don't know where people are at. You can tell me you're fine, but I don't know. He told me he was fine, but I don't know. It's not that I don't want to believe people. I just, everybody needs a game plan in their life and how they want to live their life. If I can help guys do that, then I think that's the perfect case scenario. Every guy needs to figure out who they are and what they want. And they need to know why they want it. And they need to know how much they want it. And that's the order. They need to know who they are, what they want, why they want it, and how badly they want it. And until you answer that last question, you might not want to spend the money or invest in Steve or invest in something else. But I got to tell you, you can't have everything. You can't have saving your money and the growth that happens. Because when you work with someone like yourself, you're expediting, you're buying Steve's mistakes. Wisdom is expensive, Steve, right? Wisdom's expensive. When you learn from someone who's been there and done that and made a couple mistakes and has a couple wounds, right? Scars, trust that dude. Trust that dude. Because he's thrown some heads on the table. And we want to be guys who win battles. And learning from a guy who's won some battles before, that's the guy you want to follow. You don't want the guy who's shiny and can talk, and he's a charismatic person, and he's lifting weights, but he's doing PEDs. Follow the guy that's got some scars. Like that dude, follow that guy. He's throwing a few heads on the table.
Well, Gary, I know you got other commitments, and so do I, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you want to tell my audience?
Well, I would say one last thing, and it's one of the most vital things I can tell anyone, and that is that you can never control outcomes, but you can always put yourself in the best position to succeed. There's so much stuff you can't control in life. You can throw the best pitch in the world and it get hit for a dinger and you lose the World Series or you lose the game. It's not about, you can't control outcomes, but you can always put yourself in the best position to succeed. And I think as guys, you can't control other people, but you can put yourself in the best position to succeed. And whatever that is, if it's working with Steve or working with someone else, go do that, because that's putting yourself in a position to succeed, and you won't go wrong doing that.
Agreed. Well, Gary, God bless. Absolutely phenomenal conversation today, man. I appreciate it. As I said before, we got to keep in touch.
One of my favorite podcasts I've done. Thanks, Steve.
Appreciate that.
You have just experienced the heat and pressure of the forge. Remember, words without action are meaningless. Now, after the heat of the forge, shape your thoughts, quench your brain, then put your new tools to use, adding to your leadership. Tune in next week for more lessons from the forge.